Right, let's go. So we want to do this video for a very long time. So let's get into it. So then, remapping. I have seen a few videos about this in the past with other people who've done the videos, and it's never been quite there for me. So I want to kind of go through what is remapping, explain everything, get you all up to date. And if you're looking to get your car remapped, at least you've got a bit more knowledge about what's going on. So let's get into it. So you're booking for a remap and they come to your house, or you come to somewhere like this. So I'm in the dyno room of Mallory Performance. So when you're doing remaps, what we're messing with, what we're going to read and write and do all this kind of stuff with is the ECU. So the ECU on this is a Lamborghini Urus, what I'm going to be working on shortly, but this is the car's ECU. So this ECU controls and reads and everything else, all the sensors on the engine. So like you've got your lambda sensors, you've got your, what else can I see? You can have turbo actuators. All these different things are controlled by that. So it's your brains of your ECU. So they're going to need to read that ECU with certain tools. And there's different ways of reading the ECU as well, to be able to extract the map, which is what we will call the map, to be able to work with the ECU. So we used to have to pull chips and all sorts of these, where we kind of don't have to now. Technology's moved on, but that's where chipping kind of come from. You still people mention chipping and things like that when they ask in the ring. So the three different ways of reading the ECU are, so we have OBD, which is the most favoured way. Then we have bench, which is where we have to pin out onto the pins of the ECU to get communication. And then we also have boot, which is I suppose it's the worst way, the longest way, where we have to open the ECU as well to get comms on the board itself. So it kind of doesn't matter which way the company or the tuner or whatever reads the ECU, because it's all tool dependent. So it's all pretty much dependent on what the tool is supporting for that ECU type, because there is like thousands of different ECU types and things like that we use and we come across every day. So once you've read the ECU, then you've obviously got the next stage, which is the tuning of the ECU. Now the software looks like this. So once we have read the ECU, depending on how we've read the ECU, we're kind of left with either a stock file or whatever software is on that ECU. So you have to bear in mind, if you go to some of these, well, depending on the tool that we use, should I say, and the way that we read the ECU, if it's OBD, a lot of the new vehicles are actually what we call a virtual read. So basically what that means is when we plug into the ECU and we run an ID on that ECU, it gives us like a bunch of numbers which tell us what software level and what software number that the vehicle is on based on the ECU. So when the manufacturer does an update and things like that, you'll jump up a software level. So you could go from like 3 to 4. I'm not sure what this one's on. So this one's on 1. So then you could have 2, 3, 4. So you get given the ECU make, which the make is a Bosch. Then you've got the build, which is the MG1 or EDC17 or whatever. Then you've got the actual ECU number, which is like the ECU number and software number. And then you've got a version number, so a version of whatever that software is on, which is obviously that number. So what happens is the tool will link that up to a database and download the read for that ECU. So if you've been somewhere else or a previous owner's been somewhere else and they've had a software, the map or anything else for that car, and then you took it somewhere and they've done a virtual read to then start tuning on that car, they might be left with things like AdBlue or like DCAT or all sorts of stuff which flag up afterwards, because the software that they would have been on previously on that ECU has now been overwritten with a new software which is started out stock. The only way that we know if it is being tuned or not is literally to do a bench read of the ECU. I'll show you what those are. So we can do a bench read of the ECU, which will give us a physical read of the ECU, so then we know where we start. But 9 times out of 10, even I will just do a virtual read, flash onto the ECU, and then we start from there.
it's just a cleaner way of doing things. So what we begin with when you first start tuning any kind of car is pretty much a blank file. Now there is like different softwares and things like that we can use, which kind of like put things into sort of like I wouldn't say an order, but they kind of tell us what things are. But just to give you an idea, your basic ECU will have around what could have 70,000 maps on, sometimes more. There's different maps within the map. So you've got different things like fuel, boost, timing, torque, load the request, and you've got scaling for the different sensors to tell the ECU what how to interpolate the data that's fed back from the sensors. There's so much involved in building a tune. I mean, just to tune one of these, it'd probably take me around about 150 to 200 maps that I need to adjust. And that's where you kind of like break away from different tuners, because say if you've gone to somewhere which doesn't really kind of like really work with a certain ECU or a certain brand of car a lot, you take your car there, they'll read it off, they'll tune it what they believe will be a tune, they'll write the car tune on, they'll run it on a dyno down the road, whatever. And it might feel faster, might feel this, might feel that. But you never know if there's more to be had, or if it's been set up right, or because there's that many different maps and ways of tuning these cars that you kind of have to go with the experience and people who have tuned them before, done a development on them, just to know what we're writing on is what we know what we want to write on. Now, a lot of companies do use other people as well for their tuning. I'm one of those guys that help other companies with their tuning and things like that. So they rely on us to do the development. So we'll buy the cars, we'll have the cars. I've actually got Euros sat on the dyno right now. So we work with the cars and then we sell those tunes onto other companies, which is fine, but that's where the stages come in. And the stages I'm going to go into now. And we're going to talk about like what is a remap stage, because it's probably one of the most big talked about parts of tuning that there is. So let's go find out.
Right, so stages. What do they mean? Like, why do we have stages? Why do people keep going on about like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and all this kind of stuff? And I see a lot of people online say stages they don't mean anything because, it's custom tuning. It's just a software. Like, software doesn't have stages. And to be fair, they're all right. Like, software itself doesn't have any limitations. Like, if I tell a car to run 2-bar boost, it doesn't mean the car's going to run 2-bar boost, but I can tell it to run 2-bar boost. So I have no limitations in the actual map itself. The limitations are in the car's hardware. So take this Lamborghini here. So we've got a Lamborghini Urus. What we tend to find is when we're tuning these cars, and you're tuning the engine and things like that, the hardware is going to be what stops you. And there's different bits of hardware which could stop you. You could have your stock cats, you could have your intercoolers, you could have intakes, you could have all sorts of things which are going to stop you from progressing with a tune. So what we do is we take a stock Urus, we tune it up. We find out what's holding us back, whether it be the intake, the cat, the intake air temperatures through to the intercoolers, or whatever. So we find out what's stopping us from making any more power. Then what we do, we stop there. That becomes stage 1. Because everyone likes to just tune a car as it is, and they like to know what power they can make without changing any of the hardware. Next, we'll swap the bits out that stopped us. We'll tune. If something else stops us, or if we find that we can make a little bit more power by changing something that's cheap, like the intakes and such, things like that, then we change those, and then we design a stage 2. This gives the customer kind of like a package to be able to follow, rather than trying to go blindly into what they think is what's holding the car back. So that is pretty much what stages are. They kind of give us like a package to sell, and to kind of give the customer a bit more knowledge into what is holding his car back. What happens if we run it a 99 run? What happens if we change the downpipes? What happens if we change the intakes, the intercoolers? Do I do my downpipe first, or do I do my intercooler first? Do I do this first, or do that first? That's pretty much why we have stages. And it makes sense to me, but people still get hung up on the whole stages are software. Custom shouldn't have a stage. Well, yeah, they're all right, but they're also wrong.
Stages are based on the hardware of the vehicle, and that's why we pretty much have stages. Yet people do take this a bit far with like stage 3.5, stage 6.12 and whatever else. But to me, stage 1 is always a stock car. Stage 2 is always the whatever mods you can do to make the most out of the setup. Some people have a stage 2 plus as well with the fuel in, which, okay, you understand. But to me, stage 2 is like pushing the stock system. So turbos, injectors, whatever, you know, is going to come first. That's stage 2. Stage 3 to me is if you start changing those like injectors, turbos, things like that. And stage 3 to me has no limitation. I don't go stage 4, stage 5, stage 6. It's a stage 1, 2 and 3 for me, but other people have different packages. But that to me is what stages is. So next up, we'll look at road tuning or dyno tuning. What's important and why. So now, dyno tuning. Do I need to have my car and a dyno for a tune? Now, dynos themselves are just a tool. They are pretty much just a tool that we use to run the vehicle in a safe environment. As you can see, I've stood in a dyno room. Cars are on my way around. It's just here for storage. But the dyno itself doesn't do any of the tuning at all. All it does is gives us like a readout. If I just put up a power curve from here, say we got well, this clear run on different days. So if we open it the first day, and then we open it up the second day, where is it? Yeah, so that gives us a representation of the difference in the tune. So we had the HP, that's the wheel power. So wheel power is what a dyno will actually measure, because that's a bit that's fixed to the rollers. This is a chassis dyno, so we're running with the tyres, the wheels and everything else. There's different kinds of dynos. I'll do a video about dynos and what they do. But let's just explain the graph. So we've got, this is a Maha MSR 500 dyno. So it's not a toy dyno, it's quite an expensive dyno, and it's very repeatable, which is what we kind of need in a dyno. So you have your wheel power, which is what's measured. Then you have your torque, and you have your HP, which is what is calculated. So the actual crank HP is always a calculation. On a Maha dyno, we do measure. So we measure the losses. Losses are important because they're measuring all of the losses between the tyre, the wheel, the hub, the brakes, the drive shaft, the gearbox, all the way back to the crank. So they're measuring what the actual loss is there to then be able to chuck out an actual crank figure, which is this number here. Now, Maha's pretty good. I've known these dynos go up against engine dynos and be a couple of brake difference. So the actual way they work it out is pretty accurate, because it even measures the losses in itself. So the bearings and everything else is also measured. So if I ran this again in 10 years time and I didn't do any work on the dyno, yes, the losses would be greater, but a lot of that will be because the dyno needs a grease up. But the actual crank figure will be the same. And we measure losses because, well, it's super important because those losses, say if I've got a brake, a caliper that's binding on the well, this would be the front wheel. Obviously it's the rear of the car, but it should be the front wheel, the way that we run the dyno. So say if I've got a brake caliper that's binding on the dyno, on the run, that is going to bind on the way up and on the way down. So it's going to show on here. So I'm going to have a massive loss here, which then we can go into and figure out what was going on. But the crank power will be correct. It'll be the same, because you get the loss on the way up and you get the loss on the way down. So it's super important that a dyno does measure its own losses. There's a lot of dynos out there that don't measure losses. And what would happen then is you would get losses on the way up, but the actual dyno won't know about those losses. It would just read a lower power, because obviously the brake calipers are holding the car back. So you get your losses on the way up, the car's going to know nothing about it, or the dyno's going to know nothing about it, then it's going to run a percentage increment against that power. So the power is going to be a guess, because it's not measured, which is pretty much how it works. So that's what the dyno is for. It's to measure the power that you're making. Now, the benefits of a dyno with me, with tuning, say this is an NA, I can see I've made more torque here, I've made more torque here, I can get a cursor out. I can see how much torque I've made at different points based on that. I can even see a readout of what axle's doing what and all this kind of stuff. But that is all a dyno does. Now, the dyno itself is also held back by your airflow in the room. So if you've got a little piddly fan in front of the car, it's not really going to be a true representation of what the car is going to be like on the road. Now, I even get that in here, and we've got a huge fan at the back, but still we can't quite replicate the same engine speed and the same engine airflow as what you would on the road doing the same speed. So say if I'm doing 100 miles down the road, put your hand out the window, you can just about hold your hand there. Can't quite replicate that in here, and it would have cost a fortune for us to do so. And it's the same for every other pretty much fan setup I've seen on a dyno. You can get, say if you're blasting all your air at your car, like this one here, say if you're blasting all the air at this, and the majority of dynos I see, that they turn the fan on and that fan runs a consistent air. So it's consistently blowing the same air at the car for the whole run. So low down, you're going to get a better spool up, you're going to get more airflow into there, it's going to be slightly better cooling against the actual intercooler itself because you're pushing more air than what you would see on the road. At the top of the run, you probably start dropping down a bit because you're not quite pushing as much airflow as you would on the road. So there's a lot to dynos and a lot to how things set up. So I always say to customers, like, try and take different dynos with a pinch of salt because there's multiple dynos, there's loads of different dyno setups out there, and there's good and bad about all dynos. So don't get caught up on those numbers. Like I personally, having a dyno, still prefer to tune out on the road because I get real world results. I can actually feel what's going on, I can take logs of the car, I can see what's going on, and then what I do then is I put the car on the dyno just for the graph, so I can see, yep, it's nice and smooth, I've got a decent power curve, there's no throttle closure, which I'll get on, which I would have just on the road anyway, and everything's like running great. So that is pretty much remapping. Like, all cars are different, figures you can take with a pinch of salt. What's important is always the power on the road. What is it actually putting out? Kind of always get your cars measured in the environment that they're going to be in when they're on the road. If it's a four-wheel drive car, do a four-wheel drive, so and so. It's not just important about the axles and things like that. It's also like the losses. So if I had a four-wheel drive car and I ran it on a dyno in two-wheel drive, but my back brakes are binding, the only way I would know is by finding out that my back brakes are binding. On here, even though it might be a Haldex car that doesn't run four-wheel drive all the time, those back brakes are still going to be binding and still going to affect the overall power. So there's all sorts of reasons why we do what we do, and we try and do it as best as we can. But just don't get hooked up on the whole, has to be on the dyno, doesn't have to be on the dyno. I do like dyno tuning, I enjoy it, I'm safe, I'm in a good environment, but it's always has its downsides where your airflow might not be exactly the same as the road, no matter how much you spend and how much people say it probably is, and keep it fun. Like, that's pretty much what we do this for, turning the dyno off. We're just here to have some fun. Make some good power out of the car, have a bit of a laugh, set the cars up. So that is pretty much what remapping is. So it's from booking, reading, writing, different tools, ECU structures. Whoop, lots of work involved in setting the cars up. Software, if you want to know more about the software, obviously look back through my other videos, I cover it all. I'll be doing more information on the dyno, because I'm obviously only touching on a bit of the dyno in a minute. But I want to be showing you the differences between dynos and roads and things like that. But apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got a bit more insight about what tuning is and what's important and what isn't important before you start booking in and getting your cars tuned. So I'm just going to go over now and start smashing out some of these files that I've got for other customers. Hope you have a good week, and I hope you're looking forward to the next video. I'll see you all guys later on. Peace out.